You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast.
I saw how important it is to have the right structures and community in place if you really want to do business, especially in Africa. Itana just becomes that gateway, that entry point that they can set up, and it's trusted and backed by the Nigerian government. It really shows the commitment from both government and private institutions to the advancement of Africa's economy. Investors can see entities registered in Itana has a very stable and enabling regulatory environment that gives them a level of comfort.
Stay tuned as we bring you inspiring people who are unlocking Africa's economic potential. You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast with your host, Tessa Adamu.
Welcome to the Unlocking Africa podcast, where we find inspirational people who are doing inspirational things to unlock Africa's economic potential. Today, we have Nkechi Oguchi, who is Itana's Chief Marketing and Community Officer. Itana is building Africa's first digital special economic zone and business jurisdiction that provides an ideal do-business environment for global and Pan-African companies to operate from Nigeria and scale across Africa. Welcome to the podcast, Nkechi. How are you?
I'm lovely. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here. As always, I like to start from the very beginning, so I was hoping you could give us an introduction into who Nkechi Oguchi is.
Oh, great. You've mentioned that I'm the Chief Community and Marketing Officer at Itana. I have spent over a decade supporting businesses and their scaling. I was a former founder myself. I set up a wellness and health tech business, which I was able to exit from that. And in building that, I saw how important it is to have the right structures and community in place if you really want to do business, especially in Africa. You don't have to do it alone. And that led me to join Ventures Platform, where I eventually became the CEO of one of the subsidiary Ventures Park, which was responsible for providing infrastructure and community. And I've always wanted to just keep deepening my support. And that eventually led me to Itana, where, as you've mentioned, we're building Africa's first digital special economic zone that provides a gateway for people to enter into the African market and scale across. So it's been quite an interesting journey so far.
Thank you for sharing that. So if I have this correctly, Itana was formerly Talent City?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, so what inspired the transformation from Talent City to Itana?
Yeah, so Talent City began as a bold idea. We wanted to build a space designed for builders where innovation could thrive outside the constraints of traditional systems. We were really focused on the talent, and so the name Talent City made a lot of sense. But over time, we realized that the need was bigger than just the real estate or the infrastructure. Startups across Africa, they needed not just a place to work, they needed an enabling environment, an enabling system, one that made it easier for them to set up and scale their business. So we evolved, and that evolution became Itana, where we are then looking at the entire support system that a person would need. So from the infrastructure that they need, which is the district that we are building, to the regulatory aspect of it, the regulatory and policy aspect of it that allows them a stable environment to do business, to the community that gets to support them. The name Itana, which is actually correctly pronounced Itono, is a Yoruba word, which means to ignite. It reflects our broader mission to ignite growth by giving entrepreneurs the tools, the policy, and the infrastructure that they need to succeed. So the rebrand symbolizes our shift from the physical concept, which still exists, but then we now have the plug-in of a fully fledged digital special economic zone built to power the next generation of African businesses.
So you've detailed what the rebrand symbolizes in terms of mission and impact, but can you walk us through what Itana's digital special economic zone is?
Traditional special economic zones are typically physical areas. So when you think of special economic zones or free zones, you would think of a physical space, right? With ports, cities, industrial parks, custom policies that are designed to attract businesses, but they are usually just limited by the geography of the place. And usually, previously, they were designed for more traditional businesses, so manufacturing, oil and gas, and these sectors have leveraged the benefits of special economic zone to scale because they also come with certain incentives. But in Nigeria and in broader Africa, there was no special economic zone that was designed for 21st century businesses. So your service, tech, and digital types of businesses. Itana is that. Itana is a regulatory environment that people can plug into wherever they are in the world. It gives entrepreneurs access to the same benefits of a special economic zone, like the tax incentives, business-friendly regulation, immigration support, but without needing to be physically located in one place. So this means that companies can easily plug into the economy, be able to provide a source of FDI, and also access to the local talent. So it means that a startup founder in Kenya or an investor in San Francisco can engage in the Nigerian economy, register a legal entity, open a bank account, and actually start doing business, right? Without even necessarily needing to come in. But if they wish to, there is the physical infrastructure that we have that we're putting together that would also be available to service that.
So as you've kind of noted, Itana's digital special economic zone is not limited by geography. It's, I guess, a jurisdiction in the cloud. But how does this virtual business environment practically work for, say, a business wanting to operate in Nigeria?
Awesome. So it's really simple. A startup can sign up on the Itana platform. It is a digital platform. We're very much like a tech company. So they can sign up on the Itana platform and get access to all the services. You can sign up on the platform, register a legal entity, which will take just a few weeks to process and get you your operating license. You can set up your bank account, a multi-currency bank account that has all the benefits that allows you to repatriate 100% of your capital, to be able to transact in foreign currencies, to be able to do business both locally and internationally. You get access to immigration support. So if you need to bring in investors or some of your team to train your local team, you can do so very seamlessly. We've found that lots of the companies that set up, some of the founders actually do want to come into the country and then interact a lot with the ecosystem. So you get support for that. You get access to service that helps you with your compliance, right? If you need legal services, if you need audit services, everything that you need to be able to do business, you can get access to that through the platform, right? So in practicality, with your computer, you can actually set up an entity and start doing business and scale that business. So what would have taken you weeks or months to do with layers of friction can happen very seamlessly online. So practically speaking, it means that startups don't need to navigate 10 different systems to get started in Nigeria. Itana just becomes that gateway, that entry point, that one interface that they can set up, and it's trusted and backed by the Nigerian government.
With this, I guess it's obvious that there is a huge online and virtual element and benefit. But with this, has it been challenging building, say, a vibrant ecosystem around the digital zone?
The ecosystem has been one that people have been most interested in, actually, because what we find is when people think of Africa, it's like a black box in their minds, especially if you've either never been here or you've spent most of your time overseas. So even for Africans in diaspora, foreign investors, what they are limited to is what they see in the headlines. So when they think of Africa, they're thinking, I think there's opportunity there, but I need help. I need someone to help me plug in. So the idea of having a community or an ecosystem means that they get support in the form of people that can give them access to what they need. Community is our core strategy at Itana. For us, it's infrastructure. It's very important. A jurisdiction only works if the people within it are connected, supported, and grow together, right? So we sort of see Itana as this growing economy that is contributing to the overall Nigerian economy as well. So we're building this Itana ecosystem through different layers, right? We're looking at the different levers that we can use to drive benefit to this community that we're building. One is helping them to be able to connect with other members, other peers, investors, everything they need in terms of the people. We want to be able to connect them with that people that they wouldn't typically meet. So there are purposeful introductions that help unlock their growth. We also want them to be able to access the information and insight that helps them to take very smart business decisions. We do that through the different events that we do, the different reports and insights that we share with them. We want them to also access growth and business opportunities through partnerships, government partners, funding partners, expansion support as well, and then the tools and services that they need to be able to scale. They all get to access this through the community. We have a core community of digital residents, and these are people that are intentional about building in Africa, and the community provides them that. So it's a living network of people that are truly building the future of African businesses, and our job is to keep it active and very rich and valuable for them.
As you noted, community is a core strategy. So do you have examples of how your community programs or the accelerator initiatives that you run have helped founders or businesses scale?
Yes. We actually have an accelerator of our own called Accelerate Africa. We set it up in partnership with Future Africa. That is another aspect of what we're building. And this is set to help build the next generation of unicorns. We completed our third cohort. We do 10 founders per cohort. We really believe that people need access to the right support in order to help them scale. So some of the successes that we've seen, even outside of the accelerator, for example, there's a fintech company that was looking to set up in Nigeria, and they weren't sure how to navigate that. They were actually UK founders that always wanted to plug in. They needed access to local talent. They wanted to come into the country. And we were able to give them that support to set up their entity. And now their business is fully operational in Nigeria. And they have a staff strength of about 15. And that is helping them access the local talent and providing job opportunities as well. For us, we're looking at all the way we are able to impact the economy. So from the companies itself that gets to exist to the talent that it gets to hire and drive value for that as well.
So if we look specifically in terms of talent retention, how would you say Itana operates in terms of ensuring that both local and international companies can gain, real or meaningful access to local talent?
So through Itana, international companies can legally hire local talent and be compliant, which is really important. So there are people that look at Africa and they see our population and the youthfulness of that population as a great advantage, and that affordable talent as well. And they're trying to figure out how they can plug in a compliant way. This allows them to legally hire and stay compliant, right? So, and we work with different PEO partners that help provide this easy access to talent and the support infrastructure for them. And through this as well, people can actually pay and manage their remote team and be able to manage their banking and payroll system. And even for the local talent, we are able to then also connect them to these companies that are looking to access the kinds of skills that they provide and also upskill that talent that they have so they are able to tap into a vetted network of founders and builders. What sets us apart is that we are a partner, right? We help them to not feel like they are going in blind as they are thinking through, how can I leverage this great talent opportunity to grow my company? So we help global teams to navigate even the cultural nuances, to build trust and truly engage with the local talent ecosystem. And because our digital residence is open to both individuals and companies, we create two-sided access, making it easier for talent and opportunity to really find each other.
You mentioned your work with partners, so keeping on the theme of partners, can you tell us about the recent MOU with Nigeria's Ministry of industry, trade, and investment. What are the implications for digital trade?
Yeah, we recently signed an MOU with the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. The focus is on leveraging digital special economic zones like Itana to create 100,000 high-value jobs over the next 5 years. This is part of a broader national strategy under NATEP to position Nigeria as a global hub for digital services. So NATEP focuses on exporting talent. Lots of the time when we think of export is usually very goods and like product heavy. We are shifting the narrative and the focus to service export and also talent export. Talent is technically a service. So NATEP focuses on exporting talent and it's really important. But without the infrastructure at home, we risk building for other markets. And that's where Itana really steps in. We provide infrastructure to build locally and trade globally. So this means that a developer in Lagos can work for a US company and still eventually upskill and be able to launch a startup at home. We're building this environment where talent can thrive, even though they choose to remain local and then contribute to the economy. And that's really important.
As you highlighted, infrastructure is key. So how does collaboration with infrastructure and policy partners like the Africa Finance Corporation enhance Itana's long-term vision?
Yeah, the African Finance Corporation is a very crucial partner for us. We announced last year their commitment of $100 million for the district, the technology, and also the accelerator. Partnerships like this, they signal institutional belief in Itana's long-term impact. And more importantly, they really help us scale. AFC is bringing not just capital, they're also bringing a whole lot of credibility and relationship and deep experience in African infrastructure development. Their involvement supports the build-outs, like I said, of our fiscal district, which is in Alara City, and ensures that the digital zone still remains anchored in real-world infrastructure, as well as the policy and the economic inclusion. So these kind of collaborations are really important. They create a stable, high-trust environment that is also needed to attract global businesses. When we started Itana, a lot of the things that we faced were people wanting to understand what we're building, because this was the first for this particular sector. So we had to do a lot of education. We had to do a lot of work with even government partners. And we are so fortunate to have gotten support from different ministries like the Ministry of Trade, like the Ministry of Innovation and Digital Economy, that has really, really supported us. And even the president that set up a presidential steering committee that is focused on advancing Nigerians' digital special economic zone framework. And that committee is chaired by the president of Nigeria himself. So yes, it's really important having those key partnerships, because what it does is that it really shows the commitment from both government and private institutions to the advancement of Africa's economy. And they're putting their support, their resources behind what we're building. So we've been really fortunate to have gotten to really enjoy that support.
You're listening to Verto Corner, powered by Verto. Today, we're exploring why more businesses are ditching traditional international payments and paying locally instead. Joining us is Austin Okpagu, Country Manager for Nigeria at Verto, to explain why this shift matters and how it's changing the game. Austin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tese. And to some of the discussions around local payments and why a lot of businesses are ditching the traditional banks to leverage fintech for essentially their cross-border payment needs. There are various reasons, and we've noticed that even here at Verto, especially around some of the challenges that businesses do face when it comes to payment within the continent. And the reason is because there's a whole lot of issues around cost. And so the essence of ditching the traditional payment methods is just to lower cost. And businesses try to do this, obviously working with fintech like Verto, by cutting out multiple intermediary banks and reducing the reliance on foreign currency conversions. local payments rails, what it does is essentially to reduce the fees associated with cross-border payment because you're literally just transferring from one local account to another. Also, we've noticed it also directly benefits the individuals sending the remittances and businesses engaged in inter-African trade. And more importantly, this is where we've seen most of the conversation around is faster settlement. As you know, international payment, it's already very complicated and difficult. So by leveraging local payment options, the travel the world and back approach often involve converting local African currencies to hard currencies like USD, GBP, or Euro, and then back again, adding layers of fees and delays is mostly eliminated. And the reason is because a lot of these transactions involves dependency on external infrastructure, which wasn't originally built for inter-African trade in mind. And so aside from the high costs, the reliance on correspondent bank, and external currencies. So I think that what is also happening is a lot of these businesses understand that, look, why do I have to pay someone in Ghana USD when I can just simply wire NGN and they get it in Ghana cedis? Likewise, why do I have to pay someone in South Africa by converting my Naira to USD first when I can just simply convert or send Naira and the person will just simply receive in ZAR? Those are some of the reasons why a lot of the businesses are beginning to leverage on companies like Verto and to also access local bank accounts for that transactions to flow.
Great information you've shared there, Austin. But before we go, just one quick question. What's the one thing you'd advise a business to consider before making the switch to local payments?
It's very essential for any business that want to do local payments to work with a company that already have all of that inconsistencies covered, also have a robust anti-money laundering policies or process in place to mitigate the risks that potentially could come. They already have a robust, KYC process in place as well to ensure that the business that want to leverage local payment as one of the options to quickly scale within Africa is able to do so confidently without regulatory sanction. And that's also key as well. Also, one very critical element to look at is, does this company have the right infrastructure in place to ensure that your money is sent or able to give you the right payment options that suit your business? And for Verto, those are some of the things we already have covered, given that we do have the required regulatory covering in most of the markets that we operate in, and also the right infrastructure to ensure that businesses get settled at the time we promise, not going around the clock before they are settled. And this obviously help businesses to, among other things, collect payment faster and also get settled faster as well.
That wraps this edition of Verto Corner. Huge thanks to Austin for sharing his insights. We'll see you next week with more global business insights. And now back to our interview. So looking ahead, what kind of partnerships would you say Itana is looking for, and how can global companies or investors get involved in the ecosystem?
We're looking for ecosystem partners who want to help unlock Africa's economic potential in practical and scalable way. We want people who see the opportunity in Africa, not as charity, but as viable business, right? And that includes everything from accelerators and VC firms that are looking to help their portfolio companies land softly in Africa. And we've been having a lot of conversations with these companies. It really helps to build that relationship because it helps the local founders to scale, and it helps the global companies to also see the opportunity here, maybe even look through some acquisitions, some mergers, some partnerships that helps them to enter into the economy. And we're looking at global enterprises that also want to explore the local talent and get access to that, right? We're welcoming partnerships with service providers as well across legal, HR that want to plug into our marketplace and support businesses that are setting up in the zone. So getting involved could mean co-building products, sponsoring programs, or just piloting with Itana, right, as a go-to market platform for African market access.
The benefits of this is obviously access, scale, and I guess trade. So from your perspective, how does being in a digital special economic zone help companies scale across Africa?
Africa is a very interesting market, and I'm happy that lots of African businesses are thinking not just country, but also Pan-African. Right now, once someone registers in Itana, they get an operating license that allows them to be able to do business in Nigeria. And then in terms of scale, we have partners with market expansion support in other countries, especially right now, focus has been on like Kenya, South Africa, sort of like the big four. But what we are hoping is that as we see the after agreement come to realization, and even using Itana as a test bed that helps actualize this, we would be able to see more seamless expansion. So one of the big promises of the AFCFTA is the ability for companies to operate across multiple African markets with fewer trade barriers. But in reality, execution is still quite complex. Itana gives company a regulatory launchpad. So starting with Nigeria, with a Nigerian entity that is already designed for digital and cross-border operations. From there, we are building our integrations with other African markets and zones so that companies can expand more easily without needing to set up from scratch with each and every country. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of regulatory work that we need to do there. And that is something that we are working on, obviously starting with Nigeria. So think of Itana as a sandbox to be able to test some of these after policies, right? And the support that makes regional scale more feasible.
As we both know, Africa is interesting and has its own unique nuances. One of those, unfortunately, is currency volatility. I know that Itana claims to provide some level of protection against currency volatility. Can you explain how that works practically for businesses?
That's a great question. So currency risk is one of the biggest pain points for startups operating in or entering Nigeria. And there are a few practical ways that we help mitigate this. So first, businesses in the zone can operate multi-currency. Usually, when you're operating in Nigeria, you are restricted to operating in the local currency, and that exposes you to some fluctuations. But being in the zone, you can operate in other currencies, which, if that's the model you wish to access, that gives you that access and allows you to operate in that currency. Secondly, through our banking partners, companies are able to set up multi-currency accounts, and that allows them to manage both local and foreign transactions in a more stable way. These accounts also allows them the ability to hold their foreign currency for as long as they want and in whatever amount that they choose to. So there are less limitations and restrictions to how those accounts operate. So this allows you to be able to store up let's say you just got investment funding of an amount, you can actually store it in that account and store it as long as you want and then convert as you need. So that allows you to hedge against some of those fluctuations as opposed to needing to convert all of it as soon as it comes in, right? So that bank account operates in a special way. And you are also able to have easier access to be able to move and repatriate your capital if you wish to, as opposed to all the other restrictions that would exist in a typical account, right? So these are some of the structural ways. Obviously, we are always going to keep finding ways to build out more infrastructure and more structure that allows people to address some of the business challenges that they meet whilst operating.
Thank you for sharing that. So if we look closer at volatility and stability, how does Itana ensure some level of regulatory stability and trust in a market that is often challenged in this area?
This is one of the biggest questions that we get, and rightly so, because when people look at doing business in Africa, they are concerned about stability. And right now, if we look at everything that's happening in the world, I think there's instability everywhere to the point that maybe Africa is not as risky as it used to look.
Yes.
So first is that Itana operates a government-recognized special economic zone, like I said. So there is a level of oversight from NEBZA, which is the agency that regulates what we do. This means there's a legal framework protecting the incentives and the regulatory structure that we offer. And these are years old. These are the same frameworks and structure that governs the oil refineries, the airports as well. So you understand that these frameworks are heavy. These frameworks are in the best interest of the country itself. But beyond that, we've built a direct line of engagement with key government stakeholders, which is really, really important, including like the ministries, to ensure alignment on long-term goals. So we end up being a vehicle that allows them to actualize a lot of this. We take a compliance-first approach, digitizing the rules so that they are transparent and accessible. And through partnerships like the one we have with AFC, we are signaling that this zone is built for longevity. But there is a lot of work that we are doing on the policy side. It's a slow build. If you look at what we're trying to achieve with Itana, you understand that this usually would be an initiative that would be carried out by the government, but now it's being done by a private player. So it's a long build, a long work. For some of the policy frameworks that we're looking, we are working with the companies in our zone, better understanding what they need. We've seen a lot of interest in the zone from like AI companies, and we're thinking, what do these companies need? What kinds of framework, what kind of regulatory policies will they need, and how do we help them? How do we ensure that we are advocating for what is in their best interest? So previously, you would probably have to do and advocate for yourself as a company, but now you have Itana that is a partner that has the network to help you to be able to sort of advocate, especially with the government, right, in designing some of these frameworks that would make doing business much, much easier. And when certain business policies are being pitched, Itana could be a great test environment to see how they do before they scale across the nation. So there are different ways that we are looking at regulation and how we ensure stability in our zone.
What would you say has been the feedback so far from startups and companies that have set up in the digital special economic zone?
It's been really positive. We started registering companies last year, and what we've seen a few things. We've seen a few people leverage it in different ways. One are foreign founders who always wanted to access and do business on the continent and did not know how. And we end up being the gateway for them to do so. So we have a few of those, like the fintech that I mentioned, right? That we're thinking, how do I build on the continent? How do I even understand the opportunity that exists? How do I navigate all the regulatory complexity? And Itana being the one that helps them to do that. So this is a company that probably would not have been able to enter the market. Now they're here, now they're hiring, now they are engaging in economic activities. So that's one set of users. Another very interesting set of users are Africans in diaspora, like that are building companies but have never really set up entities in Nigeria. So we see them maybe register an entity in Delaware. Lots of the companies in Africa are actually Delaware entities and have not yet seen stable enough jurisdiction in Africa for them to consider domiciling their entity here in Africa. Itana ends up being a very interesting option for them. So we have lots of companies in the zone that are registered elsewhere, like in the UK, Delaware, even in the UAE. And now being registered in Itana allows them to really just have a local entity and plug into the market and to make the regulatory compliance much, much easier for them. So it's interesting as we're seeing these different use cases. We've seen some VCs that are figuring out how to plug into Itana and what would be the best management structure if they choose to do that. So that's really interesting. And they're choosing Itana because we remove the friction, whether it's with the regulatory or the compliance, and it's just looks like a smarter way to enter and scale in one of Africa's most complex, but yet very opportunity-rich market. So it's been really positive in the way that people have responded to what we're building. We've also seen very great support, almost as if it's, like I said, community effort. Because if Itana succeeds, then imagine what the impact of that would be like. Imagine what the impact would be for the economy itself. So people have been very, very supportive throughout.
You mentioned companies registered in areas such as Delaware plugging into Itana. Do you ever envision Itana becoming the Delaware of Africa?
Well, people have made that comparison, and People would say, "Oh, Delaware is this. Are you guys the Delaware for Africa?" I don't know. Right now, what we say is we don't see it as an either or. Like, oh, should I register in Delaware or should I register in Itana? We are finding that companies are seeing it as a way for them to access the African market. So some companies retain their Delaware entity and then they have an Itana entity, depending on the market that you're choosing to focus on. If you are focusing on the African market, having a local entity makes sense. And when you're thinking of having a local entity, having one in Itana makes the most sense, especially if you're a digital service-based business. What Delaware has is years of precedent. Investors understand how it operates. It has all of this that's built into it. And I completely understand that, but we're hoping to be able to build that level of investor confidence that investors can see that entities registered in Itana has also a very stable and enabling regulatory environment that gives them a level of comfort. And this will take years to build, and we completely understand that. So right now, we're seeing it as you can have a Delaware entity, you can have an Itana entity, but eventually we're hoping that when companies are thinking, where should I domicile my business as I'm building across Africa, Itana would be the first choice.
So from a marketing and community lens, how are you positioning Itana to appeal to both global tech companies and also your smaller companies, smaller African startups?
We speak to both because both are part of the future that we are building. For African startups, Itana is a platform to level the playing field. So we offer them access to formal structure, global standard services, cross-border opportunities that are usually out of reach. And then for global tech companies, we are a gateway to one of the world's fastest growing market with tools that allows them to hire, to invest, to expand with less friction. And our brand is deliberately built to be accessible, right? We focus on the stories of the real success and the companies that are using Itana to grow. We're building community throughout digital residency, our partner ecosystem, programs that would create visibility and traction for early founders. So we are combining this very important like Silicon Valley, but with a lot of African hustle. So that's how we see it. And we want to ensure that whatever level you are, you're able to plug in and leverage what Itana has to scale.
With this, how would you say the physical district in Alaro City complement the digital experience?
The physical district is a real world counterpart to our digital zone. And the vision is to create an environment that blends ease of doing business with quality of life. There was a whole time that there was this like Japan movement. I'm sure you must have heard of it.
Yes.
Even now, it's still going on. I think it has quieted a bit, but it was on everyone's lips and everyone's mind just 3 years ago, where there was a great outflux of talent and of people. And that's because they couldn't imagine having a very good life here and a good quality of life in terms of security, access to basic infrastructure like electricity, good roads, and all of that. So Itana's vision for the district is to build that environment where people can have that very good live, work, build experience where you're working on something very meaningful and interesting for the continent, and you have a very good quality of life where you have access to amenities that allows life to be pleasant. And you get to do that surrounded by some of the most ambitious people around. Our district is being developed in Alaro City. That is part of the Lekki Free Zone. It's one of Nigeria's fastest growing industrial and residential corridor. For scale, Alaro City, where we're hosted, is 3 times the size of Victoria Island. We are a city within a city. And imagine what that entire experience is around. Even right now, people are already living in Alaro City whilst our district is being built. So we are surrounded by a lot of infrastructure that makes life and work enjoyable. So the idea is that while companies can operate remotely through our digital platform, those who want to be physically present in Nigeria, whether for operations or for their team, we will have a space built with them in mind. So it's designed for that African founder who wants a base of operations on the continent, for global teams that are looking for trusted entry points. We're building not just the office space, but a full business and living district with housing, co-working, events, all of it embedded with government services and just streamlined to reflect that same digital first, very pro-business approach that we've taken online.
Quote of the week.
As people, we often have quotes, mantras, African proverbs, or affirmations that keep us going when times are challenging or when times are good. Do you have one that you can share with us today?
Yeah, that's a very deep question. Well, my personal philosophy, which is what I will share, is that whatever is worth doing, it's worth doing well. And this is definitely worth doing. So we're putting all of our energy and vim into building this. We are grateful for the opportunities. We are facing the challenges, all of it, because we really believe it's worth doing well.
Brilliant. Great way to end today's conversation. Thank you so much, Nkechi, for sharing your insights and I guess giving us a behind the scenes look at how Itana is operating and shaping businesses in Nigeria and Africa. We'll definitely be looking out and seeing how the journey evolves. It's been a great conversation and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you to everyone who has listened and stayed tuned to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, or tell a friend about it. You can also rate, review us in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast. Thank you and see you next week for the Unlocking Africa podcast.